I mean, I was completely scared. I've got, a wife and 2 kids. So it's not like I just was, to leave a job that they're like, here's a company card, here's insurance. I was allowed to do whatever I wanted, and I was leaving that. And that's a scary thing, but I'm definitely glad I did it. I mean, that's been life-changing. It's funny. So I'm good friends with Mike Blayback, who was a photographer at DC for 20 plus years. And he had approached me and said, hey, my friend Andrew's working on this podcast. He comes from skateboarding. It's going to be science and health. And I'm like, science and health? Like, people aren't going to listen to that. Like, what are you talking about? And I was completely wrong. So, but really the key part of me getting involved was,
on today's episode of Frame by Frame, I have my good friend and filmmaker, Chris Ray. He is the founder of Motion Clubhouse, which is a production and branding studio based out of Los Angeles. But more importantly, he is a huge Seattle Seahawks fan. Chris Ray, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm a huge fan of your work and a mega Seahawks fan. So that's how I found you. I was excited to see you working with Russ. And I've been following your stuff for a long time.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And it was fun after being, Instagram and text message friends for so long. We actually bumped into each other in LA last summer, which was awesome to finally meet in person.
Yeah, it was a funny way to meet. That was random, not planned at all, just out of all places, just ran into each other in LA. So it was cool.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. Just to recap Chris's journey and where we're going today. Chris was at DC Shoes forever, producing all their content. Then he started his own thing with Motion Clubhouse, and he is now, as part of that, helping run, from a production standpoint, the Huberman Lab Podcast. So I can't wait to get into all of this. Let's start with your journey into filmmaking. I know it's a huge skateboarding background, which honestly makes a lot of sense given it just ties in naturally with the sport.
Yeah, I mean, I started skateboarding in 5th or 6th grade, and my friends came to me and they said, hey, we're going to make our own video. You want to be in it? And my mind was blown. I was like, I never even thought about that. So we did what every kid, kind of did at that point, and took your parents' camera and you just start filming each other. And I just became obsessed with it. I still had no idea that anybody could do this for a living. So it didn't make sense to me. I didn't think that, growing up, I didn't know that you can do your dream job for a living. So for me, it just seemed like it was untouchable. It didn't even seem like an option. I didn't know that there's pro skateboarders. I didn't know there's people that got paid to hold a camera or take photos. Like, that just made no sense to me. I thought everybody in life worked a normal job and then they did their hobby as their passion on the weekends. So I was completely green to all of this.
And then when did that light bulb go off for you of like, oh, this can actually be my job?
It wasn't right away at all. I mean, it took a long time. And I would say when I made the connection with Ty Evans, who's one of my mentors and a huge filmmaker, the biggest filmmaker in skateboarding. And I started kind of helping him film and talking to him a little bit. And he's just like, oh, like, we're going to pay you and like take you on and teach you some stuff and support you. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe I was getting a paycheck, which, it wasn't much at the time, but the idea of somebody being like, here you go, here's money to film pro skateboarding. And I was like, that's shocking. Like, that was my life dream was checked off at that point.
From there, how did you get into DC? Because I feel like, that's, one of the biggest skateboarding brands in the world.
Yeah, I was with Lakai at first, which is a footwear company, helping with Fully Flared. And then that led to me working at Transworld Video, helping their videos for, I want to say it was like maybe 4 years. And at that point, working at Transworld as a magazine, so I worked with everybody in the industry. And I connected a lot with the DC guys and their whole skate team. So they had asked me to come over, and I was like, you know what, I think I'm ready for this. And I went over there, and it was a completely different beast. I mean, sure, you have the skateboarding part of DC, but it was like there's women's category, snowboard category, lifestyle. There's it's product. You know what I mean? Like documentary and interview styles. And at this point in my life, I had only shot skateboarding. I never sat down and did an interview with anybody. So to jump into that, I mean, I learned a ton at DC, and we built a film team. So I never really had like a crew and a team that we like kind of worked together. But everything was still in this DIY style that came from skateboarding. We weren't this huge production company. approach that's like, oh, we need to like light everything perfectly. We need to get permission. Like the idea of getting permission to film anything was, I still didn't even know that was possible.
You get all this incredible experience at DC. When did that kind of seed start to get planted on like, maybe like I can do my own thing?
You know, it was a long time. I was in DC for 10 years and they were very supportive of me doing freelance and things outside of the company. So I was just learning a ton, you know, like shooting car commercials and music videos and I mean, you name NFL stuff, right? Like I was doing a ton of stuff and it just started to snowball. I've always been very fortunate where I haven't had to like reach out to people for work. It's just kind of always just come my way and it just kind of came too much to where it was like it's hard to turn down these opportunities. And it wasn't based on money. It was based off of like what was I excited about. And spending, you know, close to 20 years in skateboarding, and obviously I still have a passion for that, but I was so excited to like learn these other things and kind of see like, okay, how do the big productions do and how are they doing this with this lighting and so on. So it just got to the point where the phone was ringing too much.
And I think that's all such good, like practical takeaways. Cause I know there's a lot of people that think about it, don't know like timing and how that works. But it seems like to me, you kind of had like the big three that I think about when going off on your own, where one, like you said, you had the passion for doing, you know, other projects outside of skateboarding. You thankfully had the opportunities and for, you know, both from like a career opportunity and then, you know, from a financial standpoint. And then you had at least 10 years of experience, right, you know, from DC to really kind of make that leap.
And it was, I mean, it was really scary. Like I was definitely worried, but it was one of those things where it just kind of felt right. It felt like it was time. And, you know, luckily I had the co-founder, Martin Phobes, he was with me at DC and I went to him and I was like, hey, look, I'm leaving. I'm going to do this. I don't have all the answers, but as they come to us, we're going to figure it out. And around that time, we were also filming a lot of kind of like, you know, business owners and entrepreneurs that were telling their stories, a lot of collabs with DC. And that became inspiring too, just asking them like, what do you kind of wish you would have done? And they were like, I wish I would have done this sooner, or I wish I just would have not been so scared to leap into it. And when you're sitting there shooting an interview with somebody about that, you're kind of inspired by it. Cause I remember I'd hear some of these comments and Martin and I would be filming it and looking at each other like, that's us. Like, that's literally us. Like, we're ready to do this. So, yeah, it's funny because I want to say like, it wasn't hard. It wasn't difficult. We were very fortunate that a lot of people supported us. But I mean, I was completely scared. I've got, you know, a wife and 2 kids. So it's not like I just was, you know, to leave a job that they're like, here's a company card, here's insurance. I was allowed to do whatever I wanted, and I was leaving that. And that's a scary thing, but I'm definitely glad I did it.
Trying to pick out what gear to use as a content creator, filmmaker can be overwhelming. So I put together a Google sheet that I will update frequently with gear that I've either used or can recommend. We'd love for you to have that resource. Make sure you click on the link below. Save time, save money, shoot better. Now let's get back to the show. And that was something I kind of wanted to touch on too. We're both, you know, dads and family man. I know there's a lot of people out there that kind of think about those type of risks. Did you give yourself your timeline? What was like kind of the dialogue with your family and your wife like around that, you know, as you were trying to make that big jump?
Luckily, I'm very fortunate. My wife is super supportive, and she was one of the people that was like, you should do this. Like, she was really pushing for it. And I told myself, no matter what, I'm going to support my family. So if I have to film and work at a coffee shop, I'll do it. If I have to get another side job, I'll do it. Like, to me, there was no failure at all, even if that meant I wasn't filming every single day. Like, it was going to be, the family was going to be taken care of and everything was going to be fine. But I mean, I didn't see how it wouldn't work, you know? And we had also been really smart over the years we bought all of our own equipment while we worked full-time at the company. So when we left, we had enough stuff in our garage between Martin and I that was like literally a rental studio. Like, whatever you needed, we had, and we had a ton of support from camera companies as well.
That's a great starting point. So you and Martin are going off, you're doing your thing. What were some of those early days like? Were you failing fast? Did you get momentum? What did that look like?
I think it was learning kind of the business side of it, because at DC, if a shoot went bad, it didn't affect our paychecks. We weren't losing any money out of it, right? But if you're on a shoot and there's kind of a bigger expense that happens and it's unexpected, we're the ones responsible for that. We're responsible for making sure that we get paid so we can pay out the crew and the friends that we're hiring. So I think just like a sense of new responsibility kind of came up, and the unknown of like, well, what's going to happen and like, what are we going to do? And but I try not to be a person that's going like, what if and what if and what if this. I try to think to myself like, let's figure it out as it comes our way. And I love to fix, I guess, situations that have problems. And that's what we did. But we were pretty fortunate. We had one shoot, the first shoot we did, and it was pretty, I guess you can call it a scary moment, where we did a shoot and we had this like classic car, and we drove it up to Big Bear Mountain, and we went to go unload the car at like 4 a.m. It's snowing everywhere. We start the car up, it won't start, and we're just having a ton of issues. And one of the guys had he poured something like on the engine. He's like really good with cars and trying to start this car up, and the car actually ends up catching on fire. And we don't have any insurance for this like $100,000 vehicle because we just started the company. We don't even have the money to have the insurance. So Martin and I had actually left. We came back and the crew is just like, they look like they seen a ghost. And I'm like, what's wrong? They're like, the car caught on fire, like the engine was on fire, and like it was a lot of things happened.
Holy cow.
And and luckily everything was fine. It didn't cause major damage to the car, but it was just one of those things where I was just like, okay, like, well, let's figure out how we're going to fix this and see what happens. And let's go get a really good insurance policy, because that's what we're supposed to do now. So that's what we did.
That's a good fail fast, learning quickly. You mentioned really learning the business side of things, and I really want to touch on this because I do feel like there's quite a lot of emphasis online with the technical camera, shutter speed, aperture, like all of those things. But I think in my experience, like the business part is equally as important. And I was doing a little research and seeing that you like making a good pitch deck, you like pitching to brands. What in your mind makes a good pitch?
I think trying to get somebody's vision to come to life. I think that's the goal, like really teaming up with a brand and seeing like, okay, how can we make this vision come to life? Like, how can we make something that not only the company that's hiring us is proud of, but something that we're proud of, something that we want to post on our own channels, something that we want to share to the world. I think that's the end goal. I'm not a person that's like, hey, this is my project and I want all the credit and I'm going to take control over it. Like, I think having a team is the most special thing in the world. And if you can have a solid crew, like you can do anything.
I think the team is so important. And for you, when you're crafting those decks, I'm curious, like, what are you using these days? Are you a Keynote, Pages guy? I've been actually dabbling in Canva a little bit for my pitches. I'm curious, like, what you're using these days.
I've used Canva mostly. I don't want to say I'm like good at it. I more take like inspiration from maybe like other filmmakers or other films, and I'll kind of like use that as kind of like, hey, like this is kind of an idea of like from this and this. It's almost like taking like a remix, right? And you're just kind of like, here, like this is kind of what I'm thinking, and this is the vibe. And usually I'm like pitching it to other filmmakers first, in our circle, and it's like right away they can picture it. And there's a lot of times that I call people with an idea or other friends, and I'm like, hey, I have this idea I want to do, and before I can even finish, they're like, let's do it. Like, everybody's just excited. I've been fortunate to surround myself with people that are really passionate about what we do, and we all want the same things, just to have fun and work with each other.
And I'm curious, like, right now, are you going to brands with ideas, or brands coming to you? What's kind of your ratio of how that works?
It's funny because we don't usually reach out to anybody for work, and we've been very fortunate that everybody reaches out to us. And when we first started Motion Clubhouse full time, I went through my LinkedIn and I was like, okay, I'm going to go through this and I'm going to reach out to all the companies because that's what we're supposed to do now. And I went through over 100 pages of contacts, and no joke, I saw one that I was like interested in, one that I was like, ooh, this kind of excites me. I didn't know that my friend or person I know works here. And I reached out to him and I never heard back. And it just kind of really hasn't been our style. Everything is kind of like natural and makes sense. And the partnerships are all just they're right. Like everybody that we work with, it makes sense. Like we're a fan of the brand, or there's some sort of relationship there. It's not just like, hey, how can we make good money and then step away? So it's kind of just having that relationship.
Yes, it's totally about relationships. And I feel like you're someone that's really good, on top of your brand work that you do, that you incorporate brands into like your own personal brand, what you're doing, whether it's Polar Pro, any of the camera companies. How do you go about, integrating different production products into your personal brand?
Well, first, the most important part is only work with brands that you truly believe in, that you truly want to partner with. So I've always been a fan of, whether a brand approaches us or we approach them, it's like, hey, look, like we use your products. We're going to use them whether we get them for free or not. And we want this to be a long-term partnership. So I'm not a fan of like jumping around and promoting different products, all the time. Like I'd rather stick with the brand that I believe in. And it's easy to say that because we've been fortunate to work with the best brands. So everybody we're working with is like the top ones. And it makes sense.
And what would you say, I think it's like, it is from the outset, it's like, oh, look at Chris. He's got quite a bit of Instagram followers. He's doing all this. Like for that maybe smaller creator who like wants to get where you are, what are some things they could do to kind of start making those brand deals happen?
Create the content without them asking. I think any individual can everybody has a good reel, right? Everybody has a good pitch deck. Everybody can send a really good email that says, hey, I want to work with you. I'm a big fan. But the biggest success that I've seen is actually showing them the results. So if there's somebody that I want to partner with and I have an idea, I sometimes just go do it. And I go, you know what? I'm doing this not even just for you, but for me. But now it's for us. So here you go. You guys can share this. You guys can use this. And then that builds that relationship and trust, because a lot of the times people in marketing, they're not creators, right? And you got to show them the results. Sometimes they can't picture it or they don't understand the full vision, and that's okay. That's not a flaw for them. But if you could say, hey, look, like this is how I feel about the brand, and this is what I could see our partnership being. And look, I already did it. This is just the start. And that's where we've had big success.
And you're saying like, I want to work with DJI. Let me go make some sort of spec spot or spec content, send it to them. That's what you're saying.
Totally. Yeah, post the product, tag them. I mean, it kind of goes back to skateboarding, right? So in skateboarding, a huge part of getting noticed before Instagram was making sponsor me videos. And the amount of sponsor me videos that we would get at DC was insane. But you'd have these kids sending sponsor me videos and being like, DC, it'd have a letter and it'd say, DC is my favorite brand in the whole world. I love your shoes. And then their whole video, they'd be wearing Nikes. And you're like, dude, like you should go ride for Nike. Like you obviously are sending this to everybody, but like when we would see people rocking DCs and we'd be like, you didn't pay for those? Like you bought those and you're trying to get on the team? Like there's passion there, right?
Yes. And passion's such a big part. And I think once you marry that with actually going and doing it is where you find the success. And I'm curious, like, what's your thoughts on kind of the future of branded content, both, from brand specific, but then also on the creator side as well?
Well, I think it's an exciting time because the everyday average person has the chance to really kind of be the face of a brand where, I recently did a health project with a well-known musician, right? And this musician, huge successful musician, talking about health. And I got done with it and I was like, I can't really relate to this. And it's because this person has millions of dollars. They can afford a chef. It's like they can buy a gym if they want. Like to me, that's off limits. I can't do that in my life. But if I were to see you post a thing on health and talking about the results you got and the brand you're working with, I can relate to it. That could be me. You know what I mean? So I think that people are now seeing each other on Instagram and going like, I have the opportunity to be that person. And I think brands are seeing that too. I think brands are seeing, if it's like, okay, cool, Tom Brady is posting something. It's like, well, yeah, but does Tom Brady actually use it? Can he afford it? Obviously he can. But I think that the normal person is really what's connecting with everyday people.
Correct. And I think when you marry that with what you said of like actually going and making the content, making it good, I think you have a better chance, even though I think it's going to be a little bit more competitive.
Yeah, and I think people see right through the paid ad ideas, right? So I think that if all of a sudden there's just like this random thing that has nothing to do with this person, and it's like, if I'm posting a McDonald's ad tomorrow, it's like that would be completely random. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's like things that make sense, and I think people can see right through it. I think that people aren't getting tricked anymore, and I think brands have to be aware of that too. Like they have to be cautious of that and figure out how are they going to work with different people and how are they going to do marketing.
Yeah, I'll be curious what happens with the creator economy and going forward. Now I want to dive into you're a key part of one of my favorite podcasts and arguably one of the biggest podcasts out there, the Huberman Lab Podcast. How did you become a part of that whole thing?
I mean, that's been life-changing. It's funny. So I'm good friends with Mike Blayback, who was a photographer at DC for 20 years, 20 plus years. And he had approached me and said, "Hey, my friend Andrew is working on this podcast. He comes from skateboarding. It's going to be in science and health." And I'm like, "Science and health? Like, people aren't going to listen to that. Like, what are you talking about?" And I was completely wrong. So, but really the key part of me getting involved was meeting Andrew and meeting the rest of the team, which it's a really small crew, and just seeing like, wow, these guys are awesome. It wasn't about the actual podcast itself. It was really about the crew that was there that got me excited. And I truly believe like it's all about who you work with, who you surround yourself with. And for me, I was like, I want to work with these guys. Like I want to work with these guys in any way possible. And just being around them every day is an inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, I think one, you see that in the show that itself, based on just like the consistency of all the episodes. And then I also think that it does such a great job of taking very like complex and scientific information, but like integrating story into it. How do you guys go about crafting that?
I mean, honestly, that's Andrew and Rob and them just doing what they know best. I mean, it's amazing because I get to see Andrew obviously on the microphone and off the microphone, and he truly does care for people even off the microphone like he does when he's talking to the camera. And I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he can talk into the camera to millions of people the way he does. It's a truly hard thing to do, so it's really those guys, like I don't know if I could take any credit for what they're doing. I'm literally just there to help anything video related.
That's good to hear. Well, so going into that, what does, kind of like a production of that episode look like from like what cameras are you shooting on? How many cameras? What does the turnaround look like?
So we have it's pretty mellow. Right now we're just shooting with 2 cameras. So it's always one on, one on the guest, one on Andrew. We're shooting on Canon C70s because that was cameras that Martin and I had. And really it's just we record the whole episode. We actually aren't even in the room. Martin and I are not in the room while we're recording. We have a monitor out running to us. And we just keep an eye on everything to make sure that we don't lose power, we don't lose any sort of connections. And while that's happening, we're editing a feature episode. And as soon as they're done, we kind of take those files and we start editing away. And Martin will run through like the entire full length episode, and then I'll run through the full episode and cut all the socials and YouTube clips and so on. And really, it's just like, what do we catch that's interesting to us that we think the world would be excited about also.
And so I got to ask, these are also obviously very long episodes. Do you have to break and swap cards? I mean, I think that is probably one clutch thing about the C70 is you probably can get a lot of recording time. What does that workflow look like?
We don't break at all. I mean, if the guest or Andrew wants to take a break, they'll take a break.
Right.
But we basically are set up in the situation, and this again comes from skateboarding, right? Where if a skateboarder wants to try a trick and they're in the mood, you don't stop them. You don't say, "Hey, the lighting isn't good," or "Hey, security is saying don't do this." Like if they're in the mind frame to do this, you as a filmmaker have to do everything possible to make it look good and get it done. So we're running like, backup power. We're running backup audio on everything. We're running, big memory cards, and the cameras aren't cutting out. So if they record for 4 to 5 hours straight, like we're not going in that room. We're not going in there. We're making sure everything is set up before and it's good to go, because the most important thing is the conversation that they're having, and we don't want to break up that flow.
Would you say that's probably like the biggest challenge of pulling off a podcast at that level?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that the biggest challenge is really like digest, like for me, having to go through the episode, which is like sometimes 2 to 3 times for a full length episode, and that could be 4 hours long. You know, like after this episode, after I'm done talking to you, I'm gonna go through a 4-hour episode, and you go through that 2 or 3 times. So I'd say the hardest part for me is like it can be mentally draining, but I've had a lot of good advice from Andrew and like, okay, like, hey, like, you know, don't just sit there all day, like do like, you know, an hour, you know, about a work, and then, you know, take a break and go and exercise and get sunlight and stuff. So it's been cool to work for somebody that can give you the health advice to help you have a better life.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, I don't think you could get anyone better to give advice on your workflow than Andrew
Now,
Huberman right now.
you know what's crazy, and I've told some people about this before, but when we first started Motion Clubhouse, you know, we obviously work close with the Huberman Lab crew, and they're very successful, and we admire everything that they do. And we went to them and we're like, hey, like, you know, everything's going good for us, for everything. Like, but what advice do you guys have? You know, we always want to learn and improve. And I remember talking to the co-founder of SciComm, Rob, and he's like, let me think about that. And I was like, okay. And he came back to me and he said, I thought about it. You should invest in yourself. And I was like, invest in yourself? Yeah, like we're gonna buy more gear, we're gonna hire some more people, take some classes, like learn some more stuff. And he just looked at me like I was crazy. And he's like, no, like invest in your health. Like make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure you're exercising, make sure you're eating healthy. And that was huge advice, because I don't know about you, but I've never worked anywhere where the person that's paying you is telling you to get rest and make sure you're healthy. Usually anybody that's paying you wants to take every single second they can out of you so they can get every single penny out of you. And that was the best advice I've ever received.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I've been studying, I guess, studying quite a bit on like kind of unlocking that extra layer of creativity and what it takes. The Rick Rubin episode was huge for me on Huberman Lab, but there is that like freedom and like I can't be my best creative self if I'm not taking care of myself. So that is really awesome that they encourage you to do that.
It's life-changing. I mean, just that alone is incredible to work with them on.
And then I know you're like very much in the weeds doing editing 4-hour episodes. Have you ever had like 1 or 2 moments of like, holy cow, like the cultural impact of this show that I get to play, you know, a part in is just like, is crazy?
You know, it's funny because it all just kind of goes like you're in the moment, right? So you kind of like sometimes don't realize it, but I love when I meet people and I don't bring it up. I don't bring up Huberman. And my favorite thing is when people will be like, you know, I'll be like, oh yeah, like I like the sauna and cold plunge. I have it in my house and stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, that's like some Huberman stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I know him. And they're like, what? Like I'm the biggest fan. So it's like, it's so awesome to hear the stories of the lives that he's changed and the impact he's had on people. And it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is pretty wild to see a neuroscience from Stanford be, such a polarizing figure. Obviously he's someone that inspires you. Is there anything else, any film content that's inspiring you right now?
I mean, literally like all my friends that are filmmakers, like every day, just seeing how much that the creativity they're doing, and everybody that I'm surrounded by is way better than I am, way better than I am. And that makes me better. But like, I love how everybody around me is just like on this whole other level. And I'm always just like, wow, like these guys are amazing. It inspires me. And like I see people, the way that they're clean with projects and like the organization, or like the way they're doing color, or the way that, that they're putting that extra time into filming and lighting. Like all of my friends around me are on this whole other level of, and I don't even think they realize it. I think they look at me and they're like, oh yeah, you're leading us. And I'm like, no, you guys are leading me, because seriously, like, it inspires me every day.
No, that's great. A great point. Cause I do think creatively that the company you keep, just helps with the output versus if, it can be freelancing, doing your own thing can be a little bit of like a solo journey. So keeping those creative folks around you ultimately keep you sharp.
It's huge. I wouldn't have it any other way.
And so let's nerd out for just a quick
Mhm.
second on gear. You're a big influence on me getting a red Gemini, which I absolutely still love. What are you shooting on these days? What are some of the newer cameras that you like? Obviously love seeing all your Instagram testing out different things.
Yeah, so, well, it's funny, you're hitting me with during a hot topic moment right now between, Martin and I, and, we've been huge Canon users for many years, and yesterday we were like, "Hey, we might be switching to Sonys." So we're possibly switching over to the FX6 right now. A whole new system and world to us that when we've used them before, but it'd be a pretty big deal for us to switch. Really liking everything we're seeing from Sony. One of my goals this year was really to master film with 16 millimeter and Super 8. So I've been shooting a ton of Super 8 and 16 mil. And one of my approaches with this was kind of start a bunch of passion projects, reach out to people that I think are creative or look cool on video, and go out and shoot some film with them. Don't wait to get hired for it. So I've been going through a lot of rolls of film already in January, and just getting that stuff developed and making sure I'm comfy with it. So if a company hits me up and wants me to do something, I feel confident that the role is going to come out and I know what I'm doing.
Where are you getting it developed? How does that process look like?
So yeah, so I have a Bolex 16 millimeter that's converted to 16:9. I have a Pro 8 millimeter camera that's also it's Super 8, but that's converted to Super Max or Max 8, so it's 16:9 as well. And I send everything to Pro 8 millimeter in Burbank, and it's pretty easy. You can just mail in the film; they'll send you back a digital file. And I'm keeping track of kind of like my settings and how I'm shooting, and kind of like really kind of like trying to study like, okay, what can I do better with this stuff? And I love mixed media. Like I'm a huge fan of seeing like really high quality HD content and then like mixing it with some sort of film look. So that again comes from the skateboarding and my time in skateboarding, and I just want to kind of bring that into the health and fitness world. And I've shot some stuff with Andrew on 16 mil and Super 8, and it's been super fun.
That's so cool. I can't wait to see it hopefully soon. I actually had a little bit of similar. I do love mixed media. When I was home for Christmas, I found my parents' old mini DV camera that I used to shoot on, and I kind of like revived that and got that up and going. So I've been shooting some home videos and different things on it. And there's something about those old styles that you really just can't replicate digitally.
Yeah, with those high 8 or mini DV cameras, my favorite thing with those is to give them to somebody that's on set or on the shoot that doesn't film. I love when they're just like holding it and zooming in and doing everything. You're kind of like, they're not trying to film it clean because they don't really know how. So I'll often take like a mini DV camera and I'll be like, hey, film with this.
That's such a good BTS tip. Now, to close out here, let's talk about maybe a couple just practical advice takeaways for really that young filmmaker that really wants to kind of break into branded content and sports.
The biggest advice I can give is just go and create your own projects. Don't wait on anybody. Don't wait on don't wait on other companies to hire you to do it. There's enough people out there that want to be creative just like you, whether that's an actor, an actress, or a set director. So reach out to these people because they're having the same kind of thoughts too, where it's like, I really want to do a project. And I'm not saying invest your whole, life into or a week into something. I'm saying like, go out and do a half-day shoot, go do a one-day shoot. Definitely take jobs for free if you need to get experience and to prove to people that, hey, like, I'm good at what I do. You can trust me. Like, I'm going to show up on time. I'm going to do a good job. I'm going to be respectful to everybody. Like,
those are all, it's super practical. And I think that I think working for free is a hot topic, but I've had a few people on the show that have said, hey, like sometimes you just gotta start where you gotta start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to prove yourself. Like I said, everybody can send a nice email or everybody's reel is amazing. You know what I mean? So it's like, but really it's like, are you cool to work with? You know what I mean? If you're the biggest jerk in the world and your reel's amazing, like, cool, I don't wanna work with you, you know? So it's like, just be cool to work with, be fun to work with, bring the ideas, like, kinda, just have fun, but, like, go out and create projects for yourself. Whether it's like, "Hey, I'm gonna take these headphones and I'm gonna make a headphone commercial with my friend around downtown." Like, give yourself that challenge because it makes you a better also at what you're doing. And dude, sometimes like in the past, when we first started doing the car commercial stuff, like we did spec commercials and we would post them and people would be like, whoa, this is really cool. Like, can't believe you did that thing for, Nissan. And then car companies would reach out to us and be like, hey, we're interested in hiring you. And I'm like, because they saw that what we did and what we're capable of doing.
That's so great. And with the technology and camera gear available now, I think you can make something look high end, even like you said, just on like a half day shoot.
Totally. And you don't need like the biggest and greatest camera out there. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do on your iPhone and you can do with GoPros, you can do everything else. Like, just figure out your vibe and style and like, does it match the brand that you're working with? Does it match the, I don't know, just go out there and have fun, create. Like every single time I shoot, I learn something.
And so for you, going out and creating your own projects, do you have anything kind of on the horizon you're working out passion project wise?
Definitely more film stuff. So I have a couple shoots lined up here in the next week and two of like just shooting on the 16 mil, shooting on the Super 8, like really stacking up a bunch of stuff to kind of almost be able to create my own reel from that stuff as well. So I'm thinking ahead of like, okay, I've shot some fitness stuff. I'm going to shoot some music video stuff. I'm going to shoot some lifestyle. So it's like, what are some things that are missing that I can kind of piece together and share on social media and put together in one reel so brands can see, hey, this is another option that we have.
That's great. Well, I can't wait to see it. Chris, thank you so much for coming on Frame by Frame. If you want to follow Chris, his Instagram is Chris Ray Films. He has so much great content. Make sure you check him out. And Chris, I hope to see you either down in LA or maybe at a Seahawks game in the near future.
Definitely a Seahawks game. We need to go to one together.
That'd be awesome. Well, thanks again, man. And we'll have to have you back here soon.
Yeah, thank you.
If you want to learn more, make sure that you subscribe to my channel. And if you could rate us on the platform you're listening to, that would be a huge help to get the word out. I would really appreciate 5 stars if this conversation was helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Frame by Frame.